Inside the Huddle is sponsored by Ohio Production Paint and Assembly Corporation. For your industrial painting needs, call OPAC at 419-582-2761 or visit them at 18 East Main Street in Osgood.
Hey readers and followers, I'm Jake Dowling from the Evening Leader with Seth Kinker from the Minster Community Post, and we are in week 6 of the Inside the Huddle preview. This abbreviated season has gone by pretty quickly, yep. And next week when we'll be meeting, we'll be talking about the postseason.
Yes,
Season's going along pretty quickly. So this week, Minster plays Parkway to end their regular season. St. Mary's will play Salina and Salina week, and then New Bremen will play Versailles. So, and then we'll get into the playoffs. We'll talk a little bit about that once we start there. So, what does Minster look like this week against Parkway?
Yeah. First off, just kind of recapping their week. They fell to Marion Local to go to 1-4. They lost to Marion Local 28-0. They faced Parkway, like you said, against. This week, they're 0-5. Parkway is 0-5 last in the MAC. Kind of just recapping again, Marion Local. Offensively, they're led by Austin Wellman. He had 11 carries for 70 yards. Quarterback Johnny Nixon had 9 passes out of 22 attempts for 111 yards and 2 interceptions. Catching wise, Jack Coney led the team with 3 catches for 62 yards, and Austin Wellman and Adam Kettner both had 2 catches for 20 yards each. I mean, it still continues to be kind of the same issues that I've talked with head coach Garen Stokes with. It's turnovers. They've been an issue. They had 2 interceptions and 2 fumbles this week to end 4 of their drives, and they're at -10 in the turnover margin. Last year they had 2 fumbles out of the whole year, and this year they already have 8 in this shortened condensed season. I mean, talking to head coach Garen Stokes at practice this week, he said, we're a program that values the football, and this year we really don't look like it. I mean, they've been 2 out of kind of continuing to go along with their offensive struggles. They're 2 out of 10 in the red zone, and they're only averaging 6.2 points per game, which is last in the MAC. He said the offense, he's like, as much as we're putting the work, and he's like, right now we're not close. So there's still a lot of strides to be made with that offense. Again, replacing, like we've talked about a lot of times this year, replacing a lot of starters. Defensively, they did get better. Again, kind of just looking at improvements again, small steps for this team. In the first and the fourth quarters, they gave up 14 points, but in the second and third, shutouts. They allowed 0 points. So I asked him kind of what your defense did better. I asked head coach Stokes what the defense did better, kind of showing improvement in those 2 against kind of a balanced man local offense. They can really run the ball well and pass. They've shown it in multiple games this season, what they needed to do. And he said, we just did better of kind of effort-wise. We did better at kind of shedding tackles and kind of finding the ball, which have been a big key for that young defense this year. Defensively, they're led by Austin Wellman. He had 6 tackles. Devin Webker, he had 5 tackles and an interception. Just a great interception, leap and grab at the end of the first half to kind of end a Marion Local scoring threat at the end of the first half. And then Nathan Bergman added 5 tackles as well. Kind of looking at the Parkway this week again, they're 0-5, haven't won a game yet this year, but it is a balanced offense. They're 6th in the conference in rushing with 117 yards per game, and 5th in passing with 136 yards per game. So they do kind of need to be, the defense as far as Minster needs to be aware about kind of both ways there. Even though Parkway's kind of last in the conference, they haven't won a game yet. They've kind of shown that they can do both things as far as both aspects offensively. So Minster can't really focus in on one thing or the other there. Defensively, they're going up against a team that has given up 368 yards per game and 34.6 points per game. So if this is a chance for the Minster offense to kind of show any steps or progress that's made throughout the season, and right with the postseason right around the corner, this is it against a Parkway defense that has really kind of struggled this year. So that kind of does it for Minster. What does St. Mary's have on the table?
Yeah, so big week this week with arch rival Salina. Obviously, they don't like each other, and there's a long history there. But kind of going back last week, they had their win against Shawnee, 10-7 win. Snapped a 2 games losing streak on the road, and they'll finally be back this week on turf. Against Salina, so we'll talk a little bit more about that. But 10-7 win last week thanks to Brandon Bauer's 25-yard field goal in the middle of the 4th quarter, and the defense kind of paved the way to steal that win for them. They had a season low in rushing at the 155 rushing yards, only had 2.9 yard average, but they had a season best in yards allowed, the 120 yards the defensive side, and that was big for a defense who was kind of struggling with the two games beforehand. They gave up a lot of passing yards, 564 passing yards and 9 touchdowns. So a game like this for them to be able to rebound, that was really big, kind of got their confidence back. But it was kind of an overall team win. pretty much all facets of the game really stepped up. The offense did just enough to get them that win. They didn't get a whole lot of rushing yards like they usually do, but they did enough to at least get them in that position to get that field goal at the end there in that fourth quarter. The defense with their rebound, of the 8 drives that Shawnee got after their touchdown in the first quarter, there were 7 punts and an interception. So the defense really stepped up. Like I said, they only allowed 120 yards and total yards and then 39 on the ground. So that's really good. Shawnee's offense isn't really the best, but it was a good rebound for that defense when they really needed it. And then special teams, they had 4 punts for a season high 135 yards, 31-yard average from Brandon Bowers. But the key to that game was not going for it on fourth down. Coach Doug Fry had gone for it on fourth down in that game twice, and they didn't convert. So they had a long fourth down, but they were in good range. I think they were at the 35, 36, and they decided to punt it. Downs it at the 2. Shawnee gets about 2 yards, and then they punt back. And it's a short field. I think it was at the 31-yard line when St. Mary's got it. And then just got enough to where it made it comfortable for Brandon to hit that field goal. He had plenty to spare, too. So so those were really the keys in that game, being able to rebound for the defense, doing just enough for the offense. They didn't really take a step forward that we had talked about last week, but they did just enough. And, being on that grass in Shawnee, and I'll get to this a little bit more, but the last 2 weeks they've been playing on grass. In that Shawnee game, the grass is really high, so I think that really affected their running game. They're going to be back on turf this week, kind of a faster pace. So they play Salina at home. Salina 3-2. They are one of there's 5 schools in the WBL that are at 3-2. So that league is very even across the board. St. Mary's obviously 3-2 as well. The Bulldogs are coming off a 28-21 win against Bath from last week. Their offense is kind of a read option offense, led by Cooper Jones at quarterback and Jackson Silliman at running back position. So that's pretty much their two-headed monster. They're kind of like a Van Wert offense where they have that read option where the quarterback can either decide to run or pass, but Salina's passing is not quite the same as Van Wert's. Van Wert's got a lot of perimeter skill players. Salina doesn't quite have that. So you don't have to worry too much about the kind of passing game that Van Wert has with Salina. I think that kind of plays into a little bit of a strength for St. Mary's, a little bit more of a run game. Last year, the two teams played, and St. Mary's won 35-6 on the road there at Salina. Cooper Jones was 12 of 24, 84 passing yards and a pick. As a passer, as a runner, he was 17 carries, 81 yards, and his lone touchdown. And then Silliman was pretty much non-factor. He had 16 carries for 46 yards. So Fry had pointed out that these guys are senior dominated, and so they have the experience. They've seen this defense before, but being at home, defense kind of got their confidence back a little bit. Offense still has some work to do. I kind of think that this game is another game that kind of plays into the strength of St. Mary's because Salina has more of a running first mentality that plays into that defense. St. Mary's is number 1 in rush defense in the league. So Salina does a lot of good things. They do a lot of things well. They're middle of the board across all their team categories and rush offense, pass offense, total offense, rush defense, pass defense. But their total defense and their scoring defense, as of going into last week, they're second to last. So they give up, I would assume they give up a lot of yards. We'll see what St. Mary's can take advantage of that. They still need to take that step forward in the red zone. They're still only hitting about 65, 66% in the red zone. They didn't really connect too well Shawnee last week. So they're still working on that. But it's just another week, and we'll see if they can make that step forward. I think with this offense, you're not going to get the juggernaut-like offense that you've gotten in the past with St. Mary's, where you run 300 rushing yards a game, 4 or 5 touchdowns a game. Right. This is going to be an offense that can do enough to move the ball, do enough to put your special teams in a good position with the field goals, and play keep away from the offense. As long as they can play clean football on the offensive side of the ball and continue to move that ball, and as long as the defense can play its game and stop that running game, It's gonna be a pretty good game for St. Mary's. Could come out with a win, and that would be huge going into the postseason.
Yeah.
Speaking a little bit about the postseason, that will start next week. St. Mary's obviously doesn't know who they play. Nobody really knows who they play. Coaches had to turn in their profiles on Monday. Profiles of what their team record is, what their record was last year, a little synopsis about the league that they play and the kind of teams that they play, and then a paragraph saying, this is what we dealt with this year. St. Mary's played two really good teams, Van Wert and OG. They lost to them with a combined, I believe, 8-2 record between those two teams. And they lost to OG in double overtime, Van Wert by 6 points, so those were close games. So it's pretty much throwing it out there that we would like to be seeded here because of what we've gone through this season. Top 6 teams in each region will get a bye week, and that first week of the playoffs, that first round of the playoffs. And then I believe the first 3 games of the playoffs will be the higher seeded team will host to try to eliminate a lot of travel. So we'll see what happens there. I would think that St. Mary's would get a home game, but also could play a WBL team as well. There are 5 teams total in the Division III Region 12, St. Mary's, Salina, Wapak, Shawnee, and Elida. St. Mary's has not seen Elida, and they've been much improved from last year. So we'll see what happens. But for the time being, week 6 for New Bremen. What you got there?
Yeah, so I'm really excited about the matchup this week. It's got two teams in the upper tier of the MAC. You got Marion Local and Coldwater both undefeated at 5-0, and then these next 2 teams, Versailles at 4-1, New Bremen at 3-2. New Bremen, they for kind of looking back at their past week, they beat Anna 38-7 to move to 3-2. Offensively, they outgained Anna 396 to 219, and it's kind of just getting back to what they've done well kind of in their 2 wins. But the thing that stood out differently to me in this Anna win was kind of Mitchell Hayes, their quarterback, had the best game of the year thus far. He was 11 for 15, 171 yards to the air with 3 touchdowns on the ground. He also added another 105 yards and another touchdown on the ground. I mean, we knew coming into the season that he was a multifaceted threat as a quarterback, could do both, and this was kind of the best game this year that he's kind of shown that ability to do both. And kind of, I mean, Coach Schmidt kind of building off of that. I mean, when I talked to him this week about kind of just reviewing the Anna win, he said he highlighted that. He said he was proud of Mitchell and how well he played, but he also gave credit to the O-line and kind of giving him time to sit back there and for those 15 passes and kind of find those guys, as well as opening the lanes for him to rush. Kind of just looking at some of the complimentary guys, Dan Homan had 4 catches for 65 yards and 2 touchdowns. Branxton Krause had led the defense with 5.5 tackles. Zach Bertkey had another 10 tackles, leading the defense. I mean, for the I know kind of flip-flop back and forth there, but offensively, kind of it's just been about finding that comfort zone. I asked him, me and head coach Chris Schmidt have been talking a lot about that this year with the condensed season, and kind of one of the things I mentioned this week was, how has implementing stuff on offense changed this year with everything being so shortened and condensed. He said, it has been needed to be a little bit faster with less scrimmages and things like that. But he says like the offense at this point in the season is kind of getting more comfortable with their personnel, where they have guys lined up and kind of what they're comfortable doing and not doing, which is, he says, is kind of leading to kind of seeing the offense kind of grow as we've gone through week 1 and now heading into week 6, putting up their most points this week with 38 points. So yeah, I mean, now you kind of look at Versailles. I mean, it's an impressive team. Like defensively, they're a 4-4 front, 4-4 base with some cover 3 in it. So it's a defense, he said, that they don't see a ton, but they've been preparing for. He said, but the thing that stands out for them, and this is on both lines, but addressing defensively, is they've just got some big kids. Probably one of the biggest teams he said the biggest team they'll face this year, this season thus far, and probably for the rest of the year. Offensively, kind of, and that transitions right into the offense. They're a league leading 1,331 rush yards on the year, which is dwarfs any team kind of behind them. Schmidt said their linemen on both sides of the ball, they're just hard to move. They're just so big, and they're so good at playing their technique and what they do. They're just like all the MAC teams, they're kind of physical, they're rushers, but he says that Versailles kind of really lives up to that with the ability, with the size of their linemen. And one of the things he did touch on, though, like, I mean, it's as much as they're the leading rusher in the league, he said, kind of looking on film, they do a really good job of being balanced offensively. He says most teams want to stay 50. Most teams might either lean one way or another, being a rush heavy or pass heavy offense, and some teams kind of like to be middle of the road throughout the game, being balanced 50-50. But he said, like, even if you look back at film and look at teams, regardless of the course of the game, how it plays off, no matter what their tendencies are, they might tend to lean one way. They might rush more one game or pass one more. He said Versailles kind of does a really good job of being that balanced team and kind of staying centric 50-50 throughout the course of the game. So he said that kind of similar to our Minster matchup earlier, it's a team that is balanced, and they're going to need to be kind of attentive on both sides of the ball. And the thing that kind of really stood out to him with that Versailles offense was the quarterback. I mean, he said, he's shown the ability to do both run and pass, but he said the thing that stood out to him the most was his ability to kind of make that decision of knowing when to kind of tuck the ball and run and prevent those losses, getting them in kind of longer down situations. And obviously in high school football, that's huge, kind of making up that extra yardage by the sticks. But yeah, that kind of wraps it up for the New Bremen matchup this week.
All right, sounds good. Well, always check our print editions, the Evening Leader. We have our weekly preview of the Inside the Huddle in print. That's in Thursday's paper. And obviously the Minster Community Post with their weekly cover as well on the website and in print. We'll see you next week. We'll talk about the postseason. Take care.